Okay, let me go on sharing my screen. I hope the ones who've joined the meeting has also downloaded these documents shared over the chat box. Right. So, I believe my screen is being shared. Let me also start recording. Okay, my screen is being shared, right?
Yeah, the screen is
Yes,
shared.
Ram, I can see it.
Okay, so I have been in the last few classes covering financial services part of your syllabus, and a few of them are still left. We had covered how mutual fund services work, how insurance services work, reinsurance services work. Then hedge funds were done, securitization was done, right? Private equity, venture capital, all of this has already been discussed. I will just be touching on two more services uh, within this part of syllabus, which is factoring and forfeiting. Have we heard of these?
Yes,
Have
I
you
have not
all
heard of.
heard of? Never heard of.
Maybe I've heard it in some other form, but not heard directly factoring what it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody? Any idea on factoring, forfeiting? Okay. I thought you will have certain idea, and we'll start directly with the case, which is fine. Okay. Okay, let me start with the case only, and let's see if you're able to think it through. So say there's a company that is into consulting, and of course it helps its companies with their problem statements, with their strategies, and uh, this company is a startup. It has just it has been in existence since only a few years, and it is yet to scale up, yet to increase its client base. But it has been able to deliver well and have been able to do a certain projects with certain clients, but yet to expand, right? So looking at the company's financial position, there's a problem with this company wants to expand, wants to cater to its expenses, but is facing cash crunch. So there are three customers the company is serving, and each of them pay $1 lakh to this company, right? So it is into B2B, it is serving companies, other companies, and these customers pay their invoices in net 45 days. So this consulting company extends a credit of 45 days to its clients, and whatever its services it has extended to its customers is payable within 45 days. So usually the payment is done after 45 days. So if company has extended a service worth $1 lakh, it is to receive $3 lakh from its clients, but only after 45 days. But again, company has to cater to its own expenses, has to pay its employees, and its monthly expense that it has to cater to is $1,65,000 to its employees, and an additional operating expense of $40,000. So just by looking at this information, can you compute the cash position of the company? So currently, the cash balance the company has is $15,000, and its account receivables is $3 lakh. Its operating expenses is 1,65,000 plus $40,000 on monthly basis. So can we have a current cash position on this of the company based on this information?
It's a negative cash, right?
Right. It is a negative cash off. So you
Off
to
would
receive
be
3
like,
lakhs.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, go
Sorry.
ahead.
No, no, please continue.
So there is 2,05,000 of an expense, monthly expense that the company has to cater to, but it only has 15,000 of cash with itself. So 1 lakh. What is this happening? One sec.
1,90,000 would be the,
Yes, one lakh
yeah.
90,000. Correct. So cash deficit of 1,90,000. Now, what options does this company have to serve its expenses? It is in a deficit of 1,90,000. What options does this company have to fulfill this, to meet the short-term financing obligations? Because from its
जो भी उनके
receivables, it will
रिसीवेबल्स हैं उनको
उनको क्या करे?
You can take a short-term loan.
Okay, so short-term loan is fine. The company can go on taking a short-term loan, but then it will get itself entrapped in this loop of short-term loan because always the company has credit, is extending credit to its customers, and to fulfill its monthly obligations, it will have to keep rolling forward that short-term loan, and that is okay. That is fine. It can. But one, this is a startup, and it is never advisable for a startup to take loan because, of course, in bad times it can go under. It is a fixed financial obligation, and more than that, the company does not have a track record of itself, does not have a financial statements of last few years of itself, क्योंकि it has just been in existence. तो probably इसको लोन मिलना मुश्किल होगा, और अगर मिलता है तो ज्यादा रेट पे मिलेगा, और thirdly it will have to keep being in this loop of short term financing. अगर आपको अगर expand करना है तो लॉन्ग टर्म लोन चाहिए ही चाहिए, लेकिन अगर शॉर्ट टर्म वर्किंग कैपिटल रिक्वायरमेंट भी फुलफिल करनी है तो भी लोन चाहिए. तो don't you think that this taking loan to cater its operating expense may not be a very good idea for the
Yeah.
company?
So there is something called bill discounting we had studied. Will that work here?
Yes, exactly. That is factoring. That's
Okay. Bill discounting
exactly
is
what factoring
Okay.
is.
Okay.
Right. One second. I don't know what is happening. Right. So financial position we have discussed. So now that we have established that, what can this company do is it can go on selling its long-term receivables. Remember securitization, the banks do it, securitization mein what does bank do? Bank sell its long-term receivables, correct?
Right.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
then bank is able to securitize it. Bank is able to generate marketable securities of it and sell it to the investors. But every company cannot ask bank to securitize its long-term receivable and then sell it to the investor. What do is they go to the bank and bank prepay their bills. Uh, bank becomes a factor which is providing them services of prepaying its bills receivable. There are many other factor services that a bank can provide apart from this financing, fulfilling the financing requirement. But first and foremost is financing is done via selling the long-term receivables to bank. So definitely long-term receivables of a company cannot become a marketable security, but it can be sold off to the banks. And selling off those book receivables to the bank is what factoring is. Now, what does this do is it helps company, of course, with the financing part. The company can comfortably say the first install. So this is the terms that the bank has extended to the company, to this consulting company, which says that the first installment advances up to 85% of the total value of your account receivables, and second installment covers remaining 15% less the factoring company's fees. What does this mean?
Yeah, so I think the bank is charging some fee, which which it is charging in the second installment. Yeah,
Okay, so what is this 85%?
85% of the invoice amount, whatever is a long-term
Is
receivable.
right. So the prepayment. When this $3 lakh sum of receivable is factored by the factoring agency, 85% of this $3 lakh is paid off instantly. I don't know, there's some problem with this annotation. I hope it is being understood and you're able to understand what I'm annotating here. So
Right.
85% of $3 lakh is prepaid by the factor company to this consulting company, which comes up to
2,55,000.
okay, 2,55,000. 1,90,000 का deficit था, and now the company has 2,55,000 in its hand to disburse of its payments, its operating expenses. And secondly, जो remaining payment है, जो 15% of $3 lakh का रह गया, that will be paid off on the once this 45 days is completed, and factor agent can ask the company's customers to pay back $3 lakh. That is when the balance amount, which is 15% of $3 lakh minus the factoring fee, is paid off to BCI. मतलब 3 लाख का 85% तो instantly दे दिया. ये this I'm telling is because it is a typical mechanism that the factoring companies follow. Whenever a company factors its bill receivable or sells its bill receivable, there is some percentage of instant prepayment जो factor customer को pay कर देती है. Rest balance is paid when the bills receivable becomes due. जब bills receivable due हो जाते हैं, उनकी maturity हो जाती है, customer से पैसा आ जाता है, that is when the balance amount is paid, remaining installment is paid after deducting the factoring fee. Of course, the factor agent is going to charge a fee for delivering this service. Did we understand that?
So in this case, the customer pays directly to the agent, factoring agent.
Customer is, so see, it depends on variety of factoring arrangements that there can be. There are certain factoring companies that also administer the collection facility. So they are collecting from the bill from the clients of the customer. जैसे BCI के client से factor directly भी collect कर सकता है. That is one kind of arrangement जहाँ पे factor is not just providing financing but is also providing the administration of bills receivable, the collection of bills receivable. But then there can be other arrangements where factoring is only catering to the financing requirement. Rest other things are being done by the client. तो अगर BCI collect करता है, तो BCI will be providing the factoring fee to the agent. तो इस केस में ऐसा हो रहा है, जो यूजुअली होता भी है, कि फैक्टर ही कंपनी के अपने कस्टमर से पेमेंट लेता है. So factor agent is also providing the collection service. No, it has. Right. So the factor agent can of course, is going to provide the financing. It can administer the sales ledger of the company. It can provide the collection service. It can also there is wide array of services that a factor agent can provide to its client. We'll come to that. But basic mechanism is this only, that there's this company BCI. There's this company BCI, then there is its factor, and then there are BCI clients, the debtors. BCI provides services to its debtors, and debtor draws a bills in the name of BCI. BCI goes to this factor agent and discounts these bill. Then factor agent, of course, prepays the client, its client, that is BCI. And then after maturity, this factor agent is also going to collect the amount from the debtors, and remaining installment is paid back to its client.
So
Did we understand?
In this case, is the risk getting transferred to the factor? I mean, in case the debtor doesn't pay, then whose risk it will remain? Will it remain with BCI or will it go to the factor?
Let me come to that in a while.
Okay.
Right. So we've understood the concept of factoring. Essentially, factoring है क्या वो हमें समझ आ गया. So it's a financial service to finance receivables, and there are many other facilities that can be done in conjunction with this financing, which is collection of receivables. So it is a long-term relationship. Usually, it is an ongoing relationship between the institution. Many a times, there may be specialized factoring institutions, and many a times there are banks that have a factoring branch of themselves that are providing factoring services to the client. So it is usually a long-term ongoing relationship between the financial institution and the client who is selling goods to its customers on an open account basis. Usually ये B2B के लिए work करता है, B2C के लिए work नहीं करता है. So factor is going to purchase its debtors. Factor is going to purchase the client's book, either with or without risk. I'll talk about it in detail right now. So just to list down the wide array of functions that a factor agent perform, the very first is the fulfilling the financing requirement. Then it may also provide credit protection towards the default risk. So depends upon the term of arrangement. There are two ways of going about it: recourse basis and non-recourse basis. I'll come to that, but yes, there are certain factor agents that provide credit protection, in which case, when there is a default, the hit is borne by the factoring agent itself. So provision of prepayment of fund against debt, arrangement of collection of debt, administration of sales ledger, and sometimes they're also providing its client the credit analysis, the debtor schedule analysis of how the debtors are performing, which debtors are more credit worthy and which are not. So such kind of services are extended by the factoring company. So factoring company may just be financing, but in many cases, factoring company is not just financing; they're also collecting the bills receivable. They're also administrating the bills receivable. They are performing all that administration work. Right. So functions I have covered. Now types of factoring. The first way of classification is recourse basis and non-recourse basis of factoring. So I think you might remember this word recourse and non-recourse. We did discuss it in the last class as well.
Yeah.
Right. So can you take a guess on what a recourse factoring would be?
Yeah, it is the same thing, I mean, like whether the risk is getting transferred or not, in the sense, who on whose balance sheet the asset remains. Like in securitization, we have seen that in a recourse based, I think I might be confused, but recourse based, the asset still remains on the bank's balance sheet. It doesn't get transferred.
Correct. That is right. So on recourse basis, the default risk is borne by the company itself. So if the receivables turn out to be bad, the risk of bad debt is to be borne by the client, which means if the bills receivables are not paid when they become due, the factor agent, the bank is going to go to its client and ask for the payment, ask for its company to make these payments good. So factor is only acting as an agent. It is collecting on their behalf. It is only providing the financing facility, and it is not providing any sort of protection against credit risk. So factor has the right to recover the funds from the seller client. So factor can charge fee. This fee is going to incorporate the financing fee because it is prepaying and receiving later. So financing fee जो भी interest rate के according ये charge करेगा, and दूसरा it is providing collection services, administration services, उसके against fee लेगा. But default premium के against कोई fee नहीं लेगा, या interest rate में default premium. What default premium होगा, लेकिन जब वो fee assess करेगा, this default premium is going to come from the credit worthiness of the client itself. जिस क्लाइंट की वो फैक्टरिंग सर्विसेज कर रहा है, वो उस क्लाइंट के डिफॉल्ट क्रेडिट वर्दिनेस को देख के फाइनेंसिंग फी चार्ज करेगा, नॉट ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ द क्रेडिट वर्दिनेस ऑफ द कस्टमर्स ऑफ द क्लाइंट और डेटर्स ऑफ द क्लाइंट, बिकॉज इट द बैंक इज टू essentially collect the payment from its client if the bills receivables are not paid. Right. So
in this
recourse
case,
based,
it becomes like a short-term financing itself, right? I mean, the factor is just financing in this case.
exactly, correct.
Okay.
And on non-recourse basis, it's when the factor is also apart from financing is also providing credit protection. That's the only difference, and fee charged will be higher because it is on non-recourse basis. The factor is going to understand the credit worthiness of its customers, the credit worthiness of its clients' debtors, right? And apart from administration and money collection, since it is bearing the default hit as well, the fee will be higher than the one under recourse factoring. So that's all. Recourse and non-recourse factoring classification. Then there is advanced factoring and old line factoring, full factoring. Advanced factoring, जैसे हमने इस केस में किया था, that a portion of the bills receivable is paid in advance and rest of the balance is paid once the bills become mature, and that balance is paid after deducting the factoring fee. The way the mechanism we did in the case, right? Advanced factoring, kuch percentage of bills receivable is paid instantly and rest is paid once the bills become due.
What is the last line? What is the meaning of the last line, last bullet point? Bank participation factoring.
75% by factor. So this is just one of the cases जहाँ पे 75% की prepayment हो रही है, 12.5% का fee deduct करके मतलब 12.5 rest 25% में से once the bills become due, 12.5% is paid as a balance and rest is kept by the bank.
Okay. So you're saying from the balance payment of 25%, 50% is kept by the bank. Okay.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
This maturing factoring, again, I probably would have not come across of this particular type a lot. All I know about it is that there is no prepayment or instant payment. Again, एक ongoing basis पे relationship maintain होती है और एक payment date होती है जिसपे the factor is paying the client and a guaranteed payment date or the date of collection. So again, it is an arrangement between the client and the bank where they'll fix a date that on this date the bank is supposed to disburse a percentage or a portion of bills receivable or an entire bills receivable after deducting its fee. So there is a date set between the two. इसमें मेजरली जो काम कर रहा है बैंक या फैक्टर वो कलेक्शन और एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन और क्रेडिट एनालिसिस का कर रहा है, डेटर एनालिसिस का कर रहा है. इसमें बहुत ज्यादा प्री पेमेंट नहीं हो रही है.
So it won't help in sort of getting a cash in advance. I mean,
ये शॉर्ट टर्म फाइनेंसिंग के लिए नहीं. Yes. Right. Then there is ऑनलाइन फैक्टरिंग. ऑनलाइन फैक्टरिंग को हम बोलेंगे जहाँ पे नॉन रिकोर्स बेसिस पे फैक्टरिंग हो रही है और एडवांस फैक्टरिंग हो रही है. जैसे यहाँ मैच्योर फैक्टरिंग में देयर इज नो प्री पेमेंट. इट इज ओनली दी other services that a factor can provide is being provided. But in old line factoring, it is full factoring, which is the factoring on one, prepayment hogi, two, it will be on non-recourse basis, and three, one and two, that is prepayment, which is advanced factoring, and on non-recourse basis. Collection, credit protection, sales ledger administration, short-term financing, everything is being covered in full factoring, old line factoring. So if full factoring services is being provided, it essentially means to say that it is with credit protection. Complete prepayment with credit protection. And rest other services of collection, administration, all of that is also being taken care of by the factor. Then there is international or export factoring. Domestic factoring and export factoring, yet another classification. So we did three classifications: one, recourse, non-recourse; two, advanced and mature; three is this domestic and export factoring. अगर हम full factoring की बात करते हैं तो उसमें सब कुछ आ जाता है कि there is prepayment and it is on non-recourse basis, and all factoring services are being provided by the factor agent. This third classification is domestic factoring and export factoring, where we will talk about export factoring. Domestic factoring, there's no difference as such. Whatever we've understood in factoring can be part of domestic factoring. There's some additional things in export factoring that we can address here. So, of course, by the name, we understand कि export factoring क्या होगा.
Factoring done on bills that are going to be paid, that are going to be received after the export is made. मतलब इसमें जो trade हो रहा है वो outside of the country जाएगा.
Right. So the factors are buying the exporter's bills receivables. Yeah. So exporter is the client of the factor, and exporter's bills receivables are being bought by the factor agent. But there are four parties to it. जैसे डोमेस्टिक फैक्टरिंग में तीन पार्टीज होती हैं. एक फैक्टर है, एक क्लाइंट और एक क्लाइंट के डेटर्स हैं. इसमें क्लाइंट के डेटर्स जो होंगे जिनके साथ सो देयर इज एन एक्सपोर्टर, देयर इज एन इंपोर्टर, देयर इज एक्सपोर्टर्स फैक्टर एंड देयर इज एन इंपोर्टर्स फैक्टर एज वेल. This exporter factor is not going to reach out directly to the importer. This exporter factor is going to reach out to the importer factor for its payment. So there are four parties. So one, we understand that international factoring is when the factor are buying the exporter's bills receivable or exporter's book receivables. And then there are four parties involved: exporter, importer, export factor, and import factor. And it is also known as two-factor system of factoring.
What do you mean by import factor? What is the import
we'll talk
factor?
About
like, okay.
So one difference is that this export factor is not dealing with importer directly. He's dealing with an endorser of importer. This import factor is kind of endorsing the importer and sometimes issuing letter of credit to this importer as well. I'll talk about it. Right. So we have an exporter who is selling its product to importer, and once the bills are drawn by the importer in name of exporter, those bills, and once the shipment is also done, ऐसा नहीं है कि exporter ने importer से anyways bills तो shipment हो गई है, एक bill of leeway, there have to be proper proofs and documentation that an export factor will demand to disburse a prepayment towards exporter, and that evidence or that proves, those documents should prove that the terms and conditions that have to be fulfilled by exporter towards importer have been fulfilled. The products, the goods have been shipped towards importer, or his part of obligation towards importer has been done. Bill of lading, airway bill, जो भी bills है वो सब ये produce करेगा export factor को along with its books receivables, and then the export factor is going to send that invoice data, send those document proof to the import factor, and import factor further validates it with the importer also, that this data is correct. You suppose you owe this much amount to the exporter. You have received the goods and services that was due from exporter. Once this proof, this validation process has happened, export factor is going to provide prepayment to the exporter, and then when the bills become due, importer is going to pay its import factor, and import factor is going to pay the funds to the export factor. Right. So import factor की बात करें, यहाँ पे सिर्फ एक ही addition है import factor का. One, import factor will be an international bank, a bank international to this factoring agency. Or it can be a factoring agent, international factoring agency also. तो factoring agency हो सकती है या bank हो सकता है, but it is going to be an international for this bank. And this import factor essentially एक तो documentation process में help करता है. दूसरा, it kind of provides, it substitutes the credit worthiness of the importer for export factor. मतलब export factor is receiving a guarantee from the import factor that the importer will pay the funds, and those funds will reach the export factor. So import factor is kind of endorsing the importer. Secondly, the credit worthiness of the importer is being substituted by this bank or agency. So import factor usually issues something called, usually import factor में bank होते हैं, और they usually issue letter of credit, standby letter of credit to the importer, कि कल को importer default करता है तो import factor will make good the payments the importer defaults on. So standby letter of credit कि उसी वक्त उसको credit दे देगा, and the payments will be done on behalf of the importer. So that's the role of import factor, substituting the credit worthiness of importer with itself. So export factor has to worry about dealing with the import factor and not importer. And now that import factor will be any factoring company or a bank that will have a better credit worthiness in the market. So the default risk is being taken care of in this case by the import factor.
So in this case, export factor doesn't have any risk, right? I mean, it is always with the import factor. Like
well,
whether it's
there is a slight risk. Yes. So see, if it's on non-recourse basis, export factor is going to receive the payment from import factor itself. There is a slight risk that the import factor also do not pay. जैसे नीरव मोदी के केस में PNB, Punjab National Bank, I think was the one that had issued letter of undertaking or something called letter of credit undertaking. ऐसा कुछ उसने मोदी के import bills के लिए endorse किया हुआ था नीरव मोदी को. So this bank went under because Modi defaulted on his payments to towards the export factor, and eventually this bank had to make good those payments. So there's a slight
Okay.
risk. What if they also do not pay back?
The import factor itself,
The import
I mean,
factor, yes.
so despite the letter of credit, it can, possibly not pay, huh?
Yeah. So sometimes this letter of credit is more on a moral obligation and not a legal obligation. They keep on revising the terms on the basis of the change in the credibility of its importer itself. तो एक moral obligation है कि उन्होंने commit तो कर दिया, but कल को अगर importer की credibility change होती है तो ये commitments change हो सकती है, revise हो सकती है. So there are many types of arrangements. There are some are ironclad guarantee that an import factor would provide कि कुछ भी हो जाए हम तो credit extend करके इनकी payment कर देंगे. But then there are some that are on standby basis or on moral basis that they have some endorsement, but ऐसा 100% endorsement नहीं है.
Got you. Tell me, in case of domestic also, I mean, the sequence of things would remain the same, right? Like this, I mean, there would still be two factors, right? I mean, the banks of each
I
of
agree.
the parties,
I agree.
right?
There
There will still be
right,
banks of two
right, yeah.
both the parties. Yeah.
There will be a bank they're going to deal with, but so this bank may or may not be guaranteeing the payments of the other party.
Right.
They may only be doing the fund transactions on behalf of the debtor,
The
but they
party,
may
yeah,
not be right. So that
Yeah.
may be a difference.
Right. I agree.
Okay, so that would be about factoring. I hope you've understood the concept. Everybody in the class.
So just one thing more. I know, I mean, in the sequencing, like in the invoices are then always submitted by the client to the factor, right? I mean, all the invoices then finally come into the custody of the factor, right?
Right. देखो अगर तो नॉन recourse basis पे है तो client ने completely renounce कर दिया है of its right to receive any payment, and that is when the client is going to provide all the invoices to the bank or to its factor. But if it's on recourse basis, then of course it also remains with the client.
Okay, got you.
So agar complete right or to receive has been renounced in the name of the factor, then all the invoices and documents, all of that belongs to the factor.
Sure.
Right. Anybody else who has a doubt in the concept? ये यूनिट 6 का पार्ट है, फैक्टरिंग, फोरफेटिंग, इसमें लीजिंग और हायर परचेज भी है, बट देयर मतलब मुझे इतना कुछ लगा नहीं उसमें एड्रेस करने का, बट आई स्टिल डू इट इन other classes. We'll be having a revision class, a 4 or 5 hour revision marathon, in which I aim to cover small topics जैसे लीजिंग, हायर परचेज का मैं उधर ही लूंगी.
That will be offline or online?
Online.
Okay.
You will receive the schedule soon. We'll be starting with an online revision class to 13th May onwards. One subject per day, a 5 hour or a 4 hour lecture where a teacher will be, of course, revising the entire syllabus with you guys.
Ma'am, would it be a weekday lecture?
Yes. 13th May to 28th May, every day. One
But
or
they are
more
going
subjects.
to be recorded, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, this is during the day or evening?
That's what
Okay, we'll see. I mean, it depends on the resource person's availability. Also, we have tried to keep it in evening, but there might be some that may take place in the daytime.
I believe keeping it in the daytime would be more feasible.
Even
for
I
the
thought
students.
a 5 hour thing would be feasible. It would be better to keep it in day for both the resource person and the students, but many of them are in evening as well, extending till 9 only. So, okay, you'll receive the schedule. Any problem, anything that you face, you feel that is not suiting you guys, you can just reach out to me, and we'll see if your requirements can be accommodated.
All right. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
ठीक है, तो coming to the next part of service, which is forfeiting. Forfeiting is very similar to इंटरनेशनल फैक्टरिंग. जो अभी हमने एक्सपोर्ट फाइनेंसिंग की बात की, एक्सपोर्ट फैक्टरिंग की बात की, दैट इज फॉरफेटिंग ऑल्सो with a little changes. So forfeiting is, you can say, a subset of factoring, where or a name given to export factoring. There might be certain factoring agencies that only specialize in export financing and export factoring, and these forfeiters do not provide any service apart from financing service. They're not doing the collection. They may be doing the collection part, but they're not administering the books of the exporter. They're not doing a credit schedule analysis for the exporter. There may not be a long-term ongoing relationship with the exporter or the trader. So forfeiting is again financing used by exporters. I've seen that mostly this forfeiting is meant for capital goods, and it is more like a long term or a medium term financing than being a short term financing that is being done on recurrent basis or an ongoing basis. कोई कैपिटल गुड किसी कंपनी किसी एक्सपोर्टर ने सेल किया है, कोई कंसल्टेंसी सर्विस वन सवाइल सर्विस किसी इंपोर्टर ने रिसीव की है, दैट इज व्हेन दिस फॉरफेटिंग थिंग कम्स इनटू पिक्चर. व्हेन द अमाउंट इज बिग, usually extends for a medium term or a long term receivable. The receivables are not due within a year. The receivables may be due after a year, and there is 100% prepayment. There is no 70%, 80% arrangement and the rest on the maturity. There is 100% prepayment. The customer who is selling this receivable, the exporter, is also going to pay a fee to the forfeiters instantly, and there is the entire what do we call it, there is entire credit protection received to the exporter. This is a part where the exporter is completely relinquishing its right, renouncing its right to receive money from the importer. So दो तीन चीजें हैं. एक, I can try something else. Is whatever I am scribbling is readable?
Yes, ma'am.
100% prepayment. So we have understood international factoring kya hota hai. I am trying to distinguish between international factoring and forfeiting for you. One, the forfeiters are specialized in export financing. They are not providing factoring services for any other type of domestic factoring. Second, there is 100% prepayment and instant forfeiting fee that exporter need to pay. Then usually it is not an ongoing or a long-term relationship, and it is for once the transaction is, let's say, the company has sold capital good to a particular company, to an overseas company, then medium term to long term financing requirement is fulfilled, because these receivables are more medium term or long term receivables, receivable exceeding 1 year, and complete protection to the credit risk.
Durga, can you go mute?
Right now, forfeiting is a means of financing used by exporters that enables them to receive cash immediately by selling medium term and long term receivables. It eliminates risk by making the sale without recourse. So it is always forfeiting means it is on non-recourse basis. Exporter has no liability regarding the possible default by the importer on paying the receivables. So no right to receive in future and no default risk as well. So entire credit risk that is being faced by the exporter is taken up by the factor, and then there is yet another risk that against which this exporter is protected. Since exporter is exporting, there is an exchange rate risk. Say an Indian exporter is to receive $1 lakh 2 years from now, there is a risk. There is a risk, right? कि डॉलर की वैल्यू रुपी के अगेंस्ट बढ़ेगी या घटेगी. अगर बढ़ती है तो इज इट गुड फॉर एक्सपोर्टर और नॉट?
Sorry, ma'am, can you come again?
So there's an Indian exporter who is to receive $1 lakh 2 years from now from his importer. One, there is a default risk. What if the importer doesn't pay? Two, there is a dollar depreciation risk. What if the
Right.
dollar depreciates against rupee, right? So $1 lakh might mean 80 lakh rupees or might also mean 100 lakh rupee or 60 lakh rupees. So in terms of INR, the value can change if the dollar value changes. So there is a risk. There's an exchange rate risk. In my case, there is a downside risk. If the dollar depreciates against rupee, the exporter might have to face the loss. So in process of forfeiting, this exchange rate risk is also being covered by it automatically implicitly passes on to the forfeiter and is not borne by exporter, obviously, which may not be the case when international factoring is done. All I'm trying to do is distinguish forfeiting from international factoring, because essentially दोनों same बातें हैं. Forfeiting भी international export financing है और international factoring भी export financing है. बस forfeiting is one specific international financing where it is on non-recourse basis, 100% prepayment होती है. कोई collection administration services forfeiter नहीं देता है. It is purely financing and the credit risk protection, exchange rate risk protection that a forfeiter provides to the exporter. Okay, did we understand the difference between forfeiting and export factoring? Is there any doubt, or are you still not sure of whether you've understood or not? Okay, I think it's also mentioned here, forfeiting and export factoring. एक तो 100% prepayment है forfeiting में. Export factoring में it is an ongoing basis or terms where a percent of the receivable is received instantly and rest received at the maturity. There is an enabling bank provides unconditional guarantee. तो ये able services होती हैं. I'll come to that. I'll come to explaining the mechanism. Able services provided by the importer's bank, in which this importer bank is endorsing the importer and is providing guarantee to the exporter that the payment will be made. जो हमने पहले भी डिस्कस किया था, उसका एक पर्टिकुलर नाम है इस केस में, which is able bank. So यहाँ पे जो export factor होता है forfeiting में, वो भी covered होता है because export factor has received guarantee from import factor. For sure received guarantee from import factor or importer's bank. Factor तो यहाँ पे होगा ही नहीं. यहाँ पे forfeiter है और importer का bank है. There is no export factor and import factor. It is. Let me first go through the mechanism and then come to this. So there is an exporter, importer definitely. Then exporters, forfeiter, and importers bank. इस बैंक को हम बोलेंगे जहाँ पे in an export factoring case, importers factor था. Now it is an enabling bank, enable. Term of agreement is going to be signed between exporter and importer. Exporter is going to deliver goods to the importer. Then importer is going to provide to do an agreement with the enabling bank. Enabling bank is when importer is asking its bank to facilitate the fund transaction towards exporter, one, and second, provide a standby letter of credit that or provide financing for the payment of transactions, payment of bills. So the way we discussed in export factor कि एक importer का बैंक होता है जो importer की credit worthiness को substitute करता है, उस बैंक को हमने यहाँ name दे दिया है able bank, enabling bank. So forfeiting में forfeiter is always going to have transact with this bank and the forfeiter is concerned about the credit worthiness of this bank because this bank is guaranteeing the payments of the importer. So our importer has to have a enabling bank, has to need to get enable services from the bank in which the bank is providing the facilitation of the transactions and is also providing them the letter of credit or letter of guarantee. Bills are drawn in the name of exporter. Those bills are provided to the forfeiter. And then those bills are prepaid by the forfeiter to the exporter, which is value of bill less discount amount. On the maturity, the bills are presented to the enabling bank, and enabling bank is supposed to provide payment on maturity to the forfeiter. So, कोई difference नहीं है, same process है. Difference सिर्फ इतना है कि यहाँ पे there is a particular bank and it is understood that this bank is providing a guarantee or is endorsing importer, is providing payments on behalf of importer. It is implicit that this bank is providing guarantee of the importer's part of deed. Export factoring में that may not be the case.
So what exactly is this delivery of bills of exchange or promissory note? Guarantee I understand, but what is this bills of exchange or promissory note?
The bills that are drawn by importer in name of exporter, that importer is supposed to pay so and so amount at so and so date to the exporter. BOE जिसको हम बोलते हैं bills receivable, जब exporter अपने book में डालता है तो उसका validation इस BOE से आता है. So it is just voucher or a bill drawn in the name of exporter and usually is made by the importer. Importer बनाता है exporter के नाम पे कि और उस bills में ये mentioned होता है कि ये amount exporter को इस time पे payment होगी. So yeah, that with the guarantee from importer's bank. तो ये bank guarantee जो enabling bank ने दी है importer को, वो उस guarantee के साथ वो exporter के पास document जाता है.
So this is received after the exporter has invoiced the importer. After delivery of goods, exporter will invoice the importer, and then importer will deliver a bills of exchange.
So invoice is received alongside the delivery of goods. So exporter जब goods deliver करेगा साथ में invoice देगा importer को और जब goods deliver हो गए, exporter has done his part of the deed. Importer is supposed to draw a bill in the name of exporter. Along with this enabling bank's guarantee. तो ये दोनों documents exporter के पास जाएंगे.
And this guarantee is what is the promissory note?
Delivery of BOE और promissory नहीं, promissory note जरूरी नहीं है. कई बारी bills of exchange को promissory note बोल सकते हैं. Guarantee is the letter of credit that enabling bank would have given to the importer, or this guarantee is different. Promissory note or bills of exchange are two terms that one may use interchangeably, where importer has promised exporter so and so amount to be paid at so and so date.
Understood.
Right. तो ये डॉक्यूमेंटेशन रहता है एक्सपोर्टर को BOE आ गया और इस बेसिस पे ये दोनों के बेसिस पे वो फोरफीटर से अपनी प्रीपेमेंट ले लेगा 100% प्रीपेमेंट ले लेगा उसके बाद व्हेन इट बिकम्स मैच्योर फिर फोरफीटर इज गोइंग टू गो टू दिस enabling बैंक.
सो
तो
मैम इन द
मेजर
इंटरनेशनल
यस
मैम इन द इंटरनेशनल ट्रांजेक्शन जो है, जब भी हम अपना बिल जो है वो डिस्काउंट करेंगे किसी भी बैंक से, तो हमें उसके साथ में एक एलसी डॉक्यूमेंट जरूर चाहिए होगा।
ओके, तो अगर आप बिल डिस्काउंट करा रहे हो अपने इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड के लिए,
क्या?
अगेन आपके बैंक के साथ अच्छा रिलेशन हो सकता है, इन विच केस अगर इंपोर्टर की गारंटी नहीं भी है, इंपोर्टर के बैंक ने इंपोर्टर की गारंटी नहीं दी, एंडोर्स नहीं किया, तो भी आपको प्रीपेमेंट हो रही है, दैट इज फैक्टरिंग, दैट कैन हैपन। वो हो सकता है बिल डिस्काउंटिंग विदाउट लेटर ऑफ गारंटी फ्रॉम द एविलिंग बैंक और इम्पोर्टर्स बैंक। बट अगर हम फोरफीटर के पास जा रहे हैं, स्पेसिफिकली फोरफिटिंग कर रहे हैं, that is when this is required. Along with the bill, the forfeiter will expect an importer's bank's guarantee as well. Yes. तो
ओके मैम।
इंटरनेशनल फैक्टरिंग में तो चल जाएगा अगर आपके बैंक के साथ ऐसे रिलेशन है, जिस केस में अगर आपके इंपोर्टर की गारंटी नहीं भी ली है, देयर विल ऑलवेज बी एन इंपोर्टर्स बैंक जिसके साथ एक्सपोर्ट फैक्टर डील करेगा। लेकिन it may be the case that this importer's bank is not guaranteeing the transactions of importer, but in forfeiting able bank है, और able bank का मतलब ही यही है that you are guaranteeing the payments of importer.
ओके
राइट, सो आप जब बुक्स में या फिर और जगह फैक्टरिंग और फोरफेटिंग पढ़ोगे, तो इंटरनेशनल फैक्टरिंग और फोरफेटिंग को डिस्टिंग्विश करने में इट विल बी the you won't be able to explicitly be able to tell the difference, but from my understanding, one, there is 100% prepayment and a fee, and it is pure financing that is happening with the forfeiters. There is no other service that a forfeiter will provide its exporter. Usually medium to long term receivables are being forfeited, and there is the protection to both credit risk and exchange rate risk. There is 100% relinquishment of right by the exporter to the to the forfeiter. Yes.
मैम फोरफिटिंग के अंदर 100% जो होता है बेसिकली बिकॉज ऑफ उसके साथ एलसी है, एक लेटर ऑफ क्रेडिट जो है वो अलोंग है कि बैंक की गारंटी है कि ये पेमेंट होगी, और अदर में 70% इसलिए होती है बिकॉज वहां पे कोई बैंक की गारंटी नहीं होती, और वहां
नहीं,
पे
नहीं, नहीं।
अगर आपका इंपोर्टर जो है वो डिफॉल्ट कर जाता है तो बैंक आपसे पैसे ले सकता है।
हाँ, तो फैक्टरिंग में ऐसे जैसे बहुत सारे अरेंजमेंट्स होते हैं, ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ 70% बैंक दे रहा है, 70% प्रीपे कर रहा है। और देखो फैक्टरिंग में ना एक ऑनगोइंग रिलेशन है कि बैंक आप रिसीवेबल्स दोगे, बैंक आपको 70% देगा, और जब बिल्स मैच्योर हो जाएंगे तो बाकी बचा हुआ पैसा भी आपको दे देगा, उसमें से अपनी फी माइनस कर लेगा। यहाँ पे क्या है, ये वन गो पेमेंट है, जहां पे आपने एक्सपोर्टर को 100% प्रीपे किया और उसको इस सर्विस के लिए फी ले ली। और क्यों आप 100% प्रीपे भी इसलिए कर पा रहे हो कि यस, यहाँ पे डिफॉल्ट रिस्क इज बीइंग एक तो सारा डिफॉल्ट रिस्क आप ले रहे हो, और एक्सचेंज रेट रिस्क भी आप ले रहे हो, तो आपकी फोरफिटिंग फी तो ज्यादा होगी। लेकिन यू आर राइट कि सिंस यहाँ पे एक इंपोर्टर बैंक, अ वेल नोन इंस्टीट्यूशन की गारंटी साथ आती है, तो डिफॉल्ट रिस्क इज समवॉट प्रोटेक्टेड।
So then it is a mainly exchange risk that the forfeiter is taking.
Yes. But then again, if we are talking about SBI or national banks की guarantee, we can expect them to fulfill their obligations. But अगर कोई regional bank है, जैसे कोई तो चलो एनीवेज अभी नाम नहीं याद आ रहा है, बट हाँ ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि कोई इंटरनेशनल रीजनल बैंक है जिसकी गारंटी आपने ले तो ली, बट दे मे गो आउट ऑफ देयर बिजनेस एंड देयर मे बी प्रॉब्लम्स।
Right.
तो ऐसा नहीं है कि कंप्लीट जीरो।
That default risk will always bear. Yeah. Exactly.
Yes, right.
Of the avail bank. Of the avail bank.
Avail bank, correct. Avail जो भी। ठीक है, तो I think that would be about the factoring and forfeiting services. Any doubt in general?
No, ma'am.
Typically, these fees are in what order? Like it's like 1%, 2%, or these are more?
I would not be able to answer that question. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Well, of course, it depends upon the credit worthiness of the party. ऑफ कोर्स जो इंटरेस्ट रेट्स है मार्केट में, ऑनगोइंग इंटरेस्ट रेट, आप फाइनेंसिंग तो कर ही रहे हो, आप पैसा दे रहे हो और बाद में आपको पैसा मिल रहा है, तो उसके हिसाब से जो करंट रेट्स होंगे वो तो होंगे, प्लस अ डिफॉल्ट प्रीमियम, और फोरफीटर के केस में एक्सचेंज रेट रिस्क का भी फैक्टर इन करना पड़ेगा, और आप अगर एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन कर रहे हो तो अपने ऑपरेटिंग एक्सपेंसेस भी फैक्टर इन करने पड़ेंगे, तो डिपेंड्स अपॉन द अरेंजमेंट्स, बट ऐसा कोई इंडस्ट्री स्टैंडर्ड मैंने नहीं पढ़ा, देयर मे बी सब.
No, not a problem. I mean, I was just trying to compare, that with respect to short-term financing, will it be more expensive? And I think what you are saying is it will be more expensive than short-term financing because you are protecting
Yes.
your risk as well. Okay.
Yes, correct. But then it might not be as cheap a source of fund as any other debt is. Factoring fee ले दे के शायद ज्यादा पड़ती है, but
That's
it
what I
is
am understanding.
especially
Yeah.
for especially when it comes to startups or somebody who cannot go on taking that financial distress on its balance sheet, because debt के साथ ठीक है, it is a cheaper source. One, you अपनी working capital requirements fulfill करने के लिए आप debt ले रहे हो, debt is a permanent capital. तो you'll have to keep on rolling it over, or you'll have to keep on taking debt to fulfill working capital requirements. And secondly, when it comes to startup organizations, it is never advisable कि वो ज़्यादा debt ले, because there is more chances of going under with debt. Debt ज़्यादा है, fixed financial obligation है, तो stressed year में वो नहीं pay कर पाएंगे. यहाँ पे तो क्या है कि receivables है तो discount कर देंगे और एक financing need fulfill हो जाएगी.
Right.
ठीक है, तो I will close this for now. Now I am going to move to the other unit of our syllabus. For now, I am about its
Your voice has
services that
started breaking.
there are in the market in the finance.
Your voice has started breaking. I don't know whether the problem is experienced by others as well.
Is it being experienced by others?
Yes, ma'am.
Acha. Let me just.
Intermittently,
it's
it is
fine.
breaking.
Now it's fine.
Yeah, intermittently it is breaking. I mean, it's not continuous here.
Okay. Okay, give me a minute. I'll just get it fixed. Okay, it should be fine, I believe now.
Sure, ma'am.
Okay, so now I am moving on to as I've discussed that the course is segmented in 4 parts. My screen is visible?
Yeah, ma'am. It's visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so first unit talks about general Indian financial system and various regulators and regulations and contemporary financial services, financial engineering that is happening. That is unit 1. Then Then we have merchant banking services and specifically how they manage various issues, how they place securities or underwrite securities in the market, which I did discuss in my first offline class. Then this is unit 4, which is risk management in financial institutions, and primarily your syllabus is focused on how the risks are managed in banks, what kind of risk, what kind of operations bank engages into, and how those are managed. I believe some of it is also being done under financial risk management subject. Financial services, unit 5 and 6. So 5 and 6 for now, I am closing. Whatever is left will be taken up in the revision module. I am now going to take unit 4 in this class and in upcoming Saturday lecture. Works?
Sure, ma'am.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
Unit 4 is the most voluptuous unit in your syllabus. If you see, there's a lot of content or topics that we need to cover in this unit. अब इस यूनिट की मैं सेगमेंटेशन करूं तो 4 चीजें हमें करनी है. सबसे पहले वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड द बैंक्स ऑपरेशंस एंड अंडरस्टैंड हाउ वी एनालाइज द फाइनेंशियल्स ऑफ द फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन, स्पेसिफिकली बैंक. So analyzing the financial statements of the bank would be the first one. Second is the kind of risk the bank is exposed to, all that credit risk, liquidity risk, capital risk, interest rate risk, exchange rate risk, all of it, and how those risks are measured. And then in 2 big parts, we have to understand how the asset liability mismatch is managed by the bank, asset liability mismatch is measured and managed by the bank. And fourth one is the capital adequacy, why and how behind the capital adequacy of the bank, where we go through all Basel 1, Basel 2, Basel 3, specifically the various guidelines under Basel 3 norms issued by BCBS. So मेरा भी flow यही रहेगा. We'll be first understanding the banking operations by understanding the balance sheet and income statement of the bank. We'll analyze the bank's financial statement using ROE framework. उसके बाद we'll talk about certain risk. We'll understand capital adequacy norms, and then we'll do the asset liability management. So this is how I am going to go. I'll be doing this, covering this today, and the rest 3 will be covered in the next class. Do expect 20 to 30 marks of questioning from this unit. You can expect 1 on, of course, analyzing the financial statements of a bank. Second, on the capital adequacy norms of a bank. So if you're given the various asset structure of the bank, what kind of capital they need to maintain in form of tier 1 capital, tier 2 capital, tier 2 capital, all of that. So numerical questions expect कर सकते हो इस unit से आप लोग. Rest of the units mostly case based question रहेंगे या theory questions रहेंगे. From this unit expect numericals. Okay. Asset liability management में भी जो measurement techniques है उस पे theory या numerical कुछ भी हो सकता है. Okay. Analyzing banks' financial statements. Shall I start?
Yes, ma'am.
So to understand bank operations, we can just scrutinize the various assets and liabilities that form part of bank's financial statements. Before I start with it, I would like to ask you that how do you think the financial statement of a company differ from the financial statement of a bank? Would you expect the analysis, whenever you did accounting for managers, you must have done your financial statement analysis, right? आपने ratio analysis किया होगा, horizontal, common size, financial ratio analysis, DuPont analysis, ये सब किया होगा. But bank का financial analysis और एक company का financial analysis में क्या difference हो सकता है?
मैम जो बेसिक डिफरेंस आता है फाइनेंस एनालिस्ट करने में एक बैंक में, लाइक उनके जो ऑपरेशंस जो होते हैं, जहाँ पे जो ट्रांजैक्शन हमारी दूसरी कंपनीज के ऑपरेशन में होती है, वो उनकी ऑपरेशन ज्यादा फाइनेंसिंग और इन्वेस्टिंग में दिखती है.
राइट. ओके. ओके.
सो उनकी जो भी कैलकुलेशन अगर हम करें आरओई या फिर और जितने भी रेशियो एनालिसिस करेंगे, वो ऑपरेशन डिपार्टमेंट में इतनी ज्यादा हो नहीं पाती है.
Okay. Okay. Any other
Yeah. So I guess, in case of financial companies, uh, see uh, their assets, I mean, their deposit itself become liability, and whatever loans they're extending becomes assets. So it's different from any other company who might be investing their surplus or taking loans. That won't become an asset for them. I mean, liability it will still remain for other companies, but for bank, I mean, like
that becomes an
even
asset.
yeah,
Correct.
it becomes an asset. Yeah.
So the debts that the bank take is like a raw material for the bank, because the debt, whether it is long term borrowing, short term borrowing, or deposits the bank received from its depositors, all of that is a raw material to create assets, to extend loans, to invest in securities, all of that. So यहाँ पे जो debt है वो more than a capital, it is a raw material here. So there are different definitions of capital. So debt is not a capital here. Secondly, हम एक कंपनी में उसकी एंटरप्राइज वैल्यू निकाल सकते हैं, अर्निंग बिफोर ऑपरेटिंग इनकम निकाल सकते हैं, but here we cannot. The only indicator that can help us understand the profitability of the bank is the return on equity. We can only find the equity value of a bank. So, because rest of the capital is actually the raw material for conducting the operations the bank is doing. So there is no operating income per se. Interest expense is actually the part of its operation. Right. So definitely, as everybody mentioned, कि लोन एक तरीके का रॉ मटेरियल है, और जो वो लोन्स एक्सटेंड करते हैं वो उनका एसेट है. एसेट की बात करें तो एसेट कैन broadly be classified as the loans and investments for a bank. Which of the two is a primary business for a bank?
Loans.
Loans. Okay. Which of the two is more standardized and has more liquidity in the market?
And after securitization, it is loans only, right?
So if it is the security that you have, then it's an investment.
Okay.
Once
Yeah,
you've sold the loan,
fine,
loans are
fine.
it won't reflect in the
Investment as well
balance
as
sheet, right?
Right.
Investment is more liquid.
It is more liquid. Definitely, it is more liquid than loans, because it is a marketable security. You can sell it in the market. Secondly, it is standardized. Usually, when you invest in treasuries, you invest in foreign government bonds, mortgage-backed securities, corporate bonds, municipal bonds. All of these are standardized, uh, backed by usually backed by credit-worthy issuers, while loan is more custom or tailor-made to suit the requirement of the client, of your customer, whether it's a business customer or a retail customer, corporate client or a retail client. Loans are less liquid. Only when you securitize it, then they become, then you are able to encash them. But till the time it is a part of loan in the books, you can't really, go on selling those loans. तो ज़्यादा customized, ज़्यादा tailor-made होते हैं to suit the requirements of your client, and these are more standardized. coming to loans, so we can have commercial loans, we can have real estate, lease financing. Uh, there are retail loans as well, consumer loans, credit card loans, or automobile loans. All of this will fall under loans, right? So loan ki classification. There are commercial loans, there are personal loans that you give out to your retail clients, real estate loan, automobile loan, agricultural loan, all of that will fall under loans. Investment में क्या fall करता है? All of this is part of investment. Investment would be, if we have to classify investment, we can classify it as the ones that are HTM, hold till maturity securities. Then there are held in trading account, ट्रेडिंग एसेट्स हो गए ये, इसको हम करंट एसेट्स भी बोल देते हैं. एंड वॉट एवर दैट डज नॉट फॉल इन ईदर ऑफ द टू फॉल्स अंडर अवेलेबल फॉर सेल सिक्योरिटीज. तो देखो, इन्वेस्टमेंट है तो यू हैव बॉट सम सिक्योरिटीज, be it a debt security, equity security. Debt security है तो it can be a treasury bond, treasury bill, foreign government bond, corporate bond, municipal bond, state bond, all of that, right? Mortgage backed securities. और एक और एसेट होता है, आई कम टू इन्वेस्टमेंट, वी विल डिस्कस ऑल दीज सिक्योरिटीज इन डिटेल. तीन चीजें होती है एक्चुअली, एक होता है कैश, एक होता है लोन, और एक होता है इन्वेस्टमेंट. कैश तो आपका द वन दैट इज इन योर वॉल्ट, इन द बैंक्स वॉल्ट. देन द deposits with other banks. If a bank has deposits with other banks or deposit with RBI, all of that will get counted under cash. Deposits with other dues from other banks, or deposit with other bank, deposit with RBI, or the one in vault. And why does a bank need to maintain cash? Of course, why does a bank need to maintain cash, guys?
For liquidity.
फॉर लिक्विडिटी क्यों चाहिए उसको? क्योंकि कस्टमर विड्रॉ करते हैं, फॉर टू फैसिलिटेट विड्रॉल्स, टू फैसिलिटेट चेक क्लियरिंग सर्विसेज, एंड देन देयर इज अ लीगल रिक्वायरमेंट एज वेल, लिक्विडिटी रिक्वायरमेंट दैट अ बैंक हैज टू फुलफिल.
Right.
लीगल रिजर्व रिक्वायरमेंट्स, CRR, कैश रिजर्व रेशियो फुलफिल करनी पड़ती है, इसके लिए कैश रखना पड़ता है, राइट? तो ये तो हो गई बात कैश की. लोन विच इज द प्राइमरी बिजनेस ऑफ द बैंक, अपने बैलेंस शीट में वो इक्विटी और डेट से पैसा लाता है. इक्विटी, डेट, और डेट में बहुत सारी चीजें होती है, बट जो भी है यहाँ से पैसा लाता है, और उसका प्राइमरी बिजनेस होता है कि लोन्स एक्सटेंड करना. वो कमर्शियल लोन्स हो सकते हैं, पर्सनल लोन हो सकते हैं. इन्वेस्टमेंट में लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट हो सकती है, लॉन्ग टर्म एसेट्स हो सकते हैं, शॉर्ट टर्म एसेट्स हो सकते हैं, करंट एसेट्स हो सकते हैं. लॉन्ग टर्म एसेट्स हो गए हेल्ड टिल मैच्योरिटी सिक्योरिटीज. लॉन्ग टर्म हेल्ड टिल मैच्योरिटी सिक्योरिटीज मतलब वो इन्वेस्टमेंट, द कंपनी, द सिक्योरिटीज that bank is not willing to sell before maturity and is only going to sell at maturity. ट्रेजरी बॉन्ड है या बिल है या कोई भी बॉन्ड है, कॉर्पोरेट बॉन्ड है, जो बैंक ने क्लासिफाई कर दिया एज HTM, it does not intend to sell it before maturity, right? Held till maturity हो गया वो.
It's only a classification, right? I mean, it's not that these are closed-ended securities.
No, no.
Okay.
Bank is going to classify its securities across these three domains: HTM, available for sale, and held for trading. ये तीन क्लासिफिकेशन होती है. तो उसमें अगर बैंक ने HTM में सिक्योरिटी डाली है तो उन सिक्योरिटीज को बैंक डज नॉट इंटेंड टू सेल बिफोर मैच्योरिटी, और उन सिक्योरिटीज की प्राइसिंग डिफरेंस इज नॉट इट डज नॉट बिकम पार्ट ऑफ इनकम स्टेटमेंट. मतलब जो भी उससे इंटरेस्ट गेन होगा वो तो जरूर इंटरेस्ट इनकम में आएगा, लेकिन उन सिक्योरिटी का इंटरेस्ट रेट चेंज की वजह से, इंटरेस्ट रेट इंक्रीज डिक्रीज की वजह से अगर प्राइस डिक्रीज या इंक्रीज होता है तो वो दैट चेंज इन द प्राइस, चेंज इन द वैल्यू ऑफ द मार्केट वैल्यू ऑफ द सिक्योरिटी इज नॉट, it does, you don't need, the bank does not need to charge it in its income statement.
So essentially, these are not mark to market. Is there that?
Yes, they are not mark to market. ना ही बैंक को इस पे फेयर वैल्यू लगा के इसकी वैल्यू लगानी पड़ती है, ना ही इट इज मार्क टू मार्केट. जो भी इसकी अमोर्टाइज्ड वैल्यू होती है, द वैल्यू ऑफ द बॉन्ड, द फेस वैल्यू माइनस द इंटरेस्ट ऑलरेडी पेड, जो भी इसकी अमोर्टाइज्ड हिस्टोरिकल वैल्यू होती है वही वैल्यू पे वो कैरी होता है. और इट डज नॉट अफेक्ट द गेन्स एंड लॉसेस ऑन द इनकम स्टेटमेंट. The only effect it has is on the interest income of the income statement of a bank. तो ये तो हो गए HDM security.
Just one
right?
question,
So,
can bank, once it is classified, can it change it later on? To make it.
Yes, it can. It can.
So, based on its, if it is advantageous for it, it can always do that, right?
पर one restriction is कि ऐसा नहीं है कि आप HTM में कुछ भी डाल सकते हो. आप ऐसी securities that whose price is discovered on an ongoing basis and fluctuate with a large range cannot become part of HTM security also. Like equity. Agar if the bank has an exposure to equity, that equity cannot form part of HTM. Although it's a long-term security, but it can still not form part of held till maturity because there's no maturity to equity.
True.
Right. So, of course, there are preconditions to what may and may not be classified as these, right? So, coming back to, एक तो हो गई long-term investments जो बैंक की हैं, usually held till maturity securities. Then we have held for trading securities. अब ये कौन सी securities होती है? Any idea? ट्रेडिंग एसेट्स भी बोलते हैं इसको, यहाँ पे शायद मेंशन देखो, ट्रेडिंग अकाउंट एसेट्स. Trading account assets. So all
these are
securities. Current assets.
More like current investments. These are more like current investments, which is less than 1 year.
Yes, we can call these trading assets as current assets as well, correct? But these securities may not be just 1 year securities. They may also be a 30-year T-bond, but they are held for trading purposes.
Okay.
Right. So held for trading securities में बैंक उन securities को classify करेगा which bank intends to sell in short term and make profit of it.
So if it is a 30-year T-bond, will it still classify as a current asset, or it will be classified as a long-term asset?
No, it can very much be classified as a trading security. It can, if the bank is holding it for a day or 15 days, जैसे repo arrangements होते हैं, repurchase agreements. Are we aware of repurchase agreements between banks?
Yeah, we are, right.
Right. So इसमें क्या होता है that the bank has lent money to the other bank, where the other bank has sold it a security and promised to buy that security back at a higher price in a day or on call basis. Repurchase agreement ऐसे ही होता है जिसमें it is like a collateralized lending to another bank for a short term period. So there is a buyer and there is a seller. Buyer is essentially the lender and seller is the borrower. Repurchase agreement में seller sells the security, treasury bill, treasury bond to the buyer with the promise to buy it back from the buyer at a higher price. तो वो जो difference in price होता है, that is the yield this buyer earns. So it may be a 30-year T-bond or a 1-year treasury bill that is being sold off by the borrower to the lender. But since it will be bought back after a day's time or a few days' time, it becomes a short-term asset or a current asset for this bank, for the lender bank.
All held for trading securities will be current assets then.
Yes. It will all held for trading securities will be current assets. Many a times, certain securities are classified as नहीं उसके लिए वो अवेलेबल फॉर सेल है, सॉरी. सो हेल्ड फॉर ट्रेडिंग में और भी बहुत सारी आती हैं. एक तो ये हो गया कि आपके पास मॉर्गेज बैक सिक्योरिटीज पड़ी है जिसको आप you don't intend to keep on your books for a long term and you want to sell it in the market. जब भी आपको प्रॉफिटेबल अपॉर्चुनिटी दिखेगी नियर टर्म में आप बेच दोगे. तो मॉर्गेज बैक सिक्योरिटीज हो सकती है, सीडीओज हो सकते हैं, जैसे हमने सिक्योरिटाइजेशन में बात की थी, कोलेटरलाइज्ड डेट ऑब्लिगेशंस, या फिर बॉन्ड्स हो सकते हैं, which bank does not wish to keep in its book for a longer time. And sometimes its derivative positions, bank is also exposed to so I'm talking about trading assets in detail right now. These assets could be anything ranging from bonds to bills to equity, also to mortgage backed securities. Bank intend to sell them in near term and make profit out of it. Many a times, the derivative market to which the bank is exposed to, for whatever reasons, there can be many reasons why a bank is exposed to interest rate derivatives or exchange rate derivatives, currency forwards, currency futures, options, swaps. Reason could be it can become a counterparty to its client, to make the market or to become the counterparty to its clients, to hedge its exposures, or to really speculate, to do proprietary trading. ये तीनों रीजन की वजह से बैंक का डेरिवेटिव मार्केट में एक्सपोजर होता है. एक कि भाई उनके कस्टमर को $100 का फॉरवर्ड करना है, लॉन्ग करना है, तो दे विल हैव टू बी द शॉर्ट पार्टी, दे विल हैव टू शॉर्ट $100 फॉरवर्ड टू इट्स कस्टमर. और लेट्स से आपने अपने डेरिवेटिव्स में ये पढ़ा भी होगा कि अगर बैंक ने अपने क्लाइंट को $100 लॉन्ग किया और बैंक की पोजीशन हो गई $100 शॉर्ट की, तो वो इंटरबैंक मार्केट में जाके हेज करने के लिए $100 लॉन्ग कर लेगा. तो ऐसे बहुत सारे एक्सपोजर्स हो सकते हैं, इंटरेस्ट रेट एक्सपोजर या फिर करेंसी एक्सपोजर, जिसको हेज करने के लिए बैंक डेरिवेटिव मार्केट में एंटर करता है. तो वो भी इसके ट्रेडिंग एसेट्स हो गए, क्योंकि इवेंचुअली द वैल्यू ऑफ इट्स पोजीशन विल चेंज. It may go up, it may go down. And sometimes the bank is actually involved in proprietary trading, that is trading on its own accounts for speculation purpose. अगर बैंक को पता है कि इंटरेस्ट रेट नीचे जाने वाला है, तो वो पहले ही इंटरेस्ट रेट को इंटरेस्ट रेट को शॉर्ट कर देगा, इंटरेस्ट रेट स्वैप्स पे शॉर्ट पोजीशन ले लेगा या फ्लोटिंग रेट बॉन्ड्स पे शॉर्ट पोजीशन ले लेगा। तो स्पेक्युलेटिव ट्रेडिंग भी होती है ट्रेडिंग अकाउंट में। नाउ इट इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू जज कि जो डेरिवेटिव मार्केट में बैंक ने पोजीशन ली है वो किस पर्पस से ली है, उसको काउंटर पार्टी के फॉर्म में ली है, हेज करने के लिए ये, या वो खुद की प्रोप्राइटरी ट्रेडिंग कर रहा है। बिकॉज देयर ऑफ कोर्स देयर इज लिमिटेशन ऑन रिस्ट्रिक्शन ऑन प्रोप्राइटरी ट्रेडिंग फॉर बैंक्स एंड फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस लाइक बैंक्स, बट it is very difficult to classify whether the position the bank has taken is actually for hedging or for speculation. There was this LIBOR scandal that took place in 1970s, I believe. I'm not sure of the date. LIBOR पता है हम सबको?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
London Interbank Offered Rate. तो ये कुछ 16-18 बैंक, the most credit worthy banks would give their cost of borrowing and overnight basis पे LIBOR used to be discovered. तो eventually उन्होंने अपनी cost of borrowing को understate करना शुरू किया, and that manifested into lower interest rates in the market. LIBOR is a reference rate or a benchmark rate for many loans. Many loans are priced on the basis of LIBOR. तो अगर LIBOR कम होना understate होगा और उससे interest rate levels economy में कम होंगे. And since they knew that they are doing it, since they knew they were understating the cost of borrowing, interest rates will eventually go down. They started taking a short position in interest rate swaps and started profiteering out of it. So banks does that. They do trade on their own accounts. So all of that comes under trading assets.
In terms of restrictions that you mentioned on proprietary trading, like I know they can do it on their own funds. I mean, is that allowed? I mean, if they have
That is what
generated
proprietary
profits,
trading is. जब बैंक
Right.
अपने फंड्स पे ओन फंड्स पे कर रहा है, क्लाइंट के बिहाफ पे नहीं कर रहा है, तो
Right.
वो प्रोप्राइटरी ट्रेडिंग ही है.
okay.
Although they can't do, banks cannot expose themselves to such risk activities, but then कौन बताएगा कि ये proprietary trading है या फिर hedging के लिए है?
True. So
Right.
even on its
So,
own fund, it cannot do proprietary trading.
नहीं, मतलब उसका ओन फंड तो क्या ही है, मतलब उसका इक्विटी की वैल्यू इज एसेट माइनस लायबिलिटी, राइट? तो अगर एडिशनल से आप क्या कह रहे हो कि अगर इक्विटी कैपिटल पे अलग से ट्रेडिंग कर रहा है, आई मीन आई डिडंट अंडरस्टैंड योर क्वेश्चन.
No, essentially, whatever profits bank is making through net interest incomes, that is his own money, right? That is not somebody's deposits. I mean, can it use that to
So
do
eventually,
proprietary trading? Surplus cash.
So the profits that the bank is making can either be redistributed or reinvested in the company, right? तो अगर reinvest होता है तो it is going to flow into the investment side of the balance sheet. तो अगेन मतलब वो जब कैपिटल का ही पार्ट बन जाता है तो और रॉ मटेरियल का ही पार्ट बन जाता है तो कैसे क्लासिफाई करें? मतलब कर सकते हैं, पर देयर इज रिस्ट्रिक्शन की ओनली अ परसेंटेज ऑफ योर entire capital can be exposed to such risky trading activities.
No, got you. I mean, I was just trying to understand what is proprietary as such. Is that word proprietary?
Proprietary is when you're not doing on the behalf of the customer. You're doing on your own. अब आप hedge करने के लिए कर रहे हो, risk mitigate करने के लिए कर रहे हो या speculation को leverage करने के लिए कर रहे हो, वो नहीं आप वो तो मतलब you would show कि ये hedging है, but you may also be speculating.
Okay.
अगर वो क्लाइंट के बिहाफ पे हो रहा है या क्लाइंट की काउंटर पार्टी बन के हो रहा है तो वो एक अलग बात हो गई, राइट? तो ट्रेडिंग एसेट्स में, हेल्ड फॉर ट्रेडिंग एसेट्स में अगर हम टिपिकल डेफिनेशन की बात करें तो ये वो सिक्योरिटीज आ गई जो बैंक इज गोइंग टू सेल इन नियर टर्म whenever it sees a profitable opportunity, जब उसका मार्केट वैल्यू राइज हो जाएगा. और इसी में ही ये डेरिवेटिव का जो एक्सपोजर है बैंक का वो भी यहाँ पे रिफ्लेक्ट होगा. So held for trading is of course these securities are marked to market, unlike the ones that are held till maturity. The securities of held for trading are marked to market. And any unrealized gain or loss is either part of capital or will become part of capital. Matlab, the hit is going to be taken by equity, and the profits are also going to be enjoyed by the equity only. So mark to end securities पे जो unrealized gain है या तो वो already flow कर चुका है P&L statement के through balance sheet के capital में. So whenever the financial statements of the bank is reported, whether quarterly or annually, whatever unrealized gain or loss are there under HFT security, अनरियलाइज गेन लॉस हम समझते हैं कि अभी तक बेचा नहीं है पर मार्केट वैल्यू इतने से बढ़ चुका है, तो नोशनली मेरे को प्रॉफिट हो चुका है, लेकिन जब बेचेंगे तब वो रियलाइज होगा प्रॉफिट. तो अनरियलाइज्ड गेन लॉस तो वो हो गया कि अभी तक बेचा नहीं है लेकिन इतना प्रॉफिट बना लिया है. तो वो प्रॉफिट पीएनएल में आप रिफ्लेक्ट करोगे और इवेंचुअली वो इक्विटी में भी रिफ्लेक्ट होगा, प्रॉफिट या लॉस जो भी है. Are you understanding this? Held for trading securities?
Yeah.
तो ये तो हो गए ट्रेडिंग एसेट्स. अच्छा, अवेलेबल फॉर सेल रह गया. नाउ देयर इज थर्ड क्लासिफिकेशन, एंड थर्ड क्लासिफिकेशन is available for sale securities. Available for sale securities would be those securities that bank do not intend to sell in the short term, but may also sell. It may as well sell it in the short term. It is not hardbound that it will be kept or held till maturity. Anything that does not fall in the prior two categories falls here. Available for sale securities. And again, है तो ये भी marketable securities ही. They are also mark to market. And they are more like liquidity cushions to in the stressed period. Ki whenever there is liquidity shortfall, if a bank face, these are those securities it can comfortably sell and replenish its liquidity. So to make up for liquidity shortfalls, ये वो securities हो गई जो easily bank without much loss of value sell it in the market on an immediate basis. एक security liquid कब होती है? जब it can be easily sold in the market without much loss of value. So these are those securities that the bank does not intend to sell, but in case of liquidity shortfalls, it can replenish its liquidity by selling the securities lying under available for sale securities. Did we understand? घूम फिर के है वही सिक्योरिटीज आपके ट्रेजरी बॉन्ड्स, गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड्स, कॉर्पोरेट बॉन्ड्स, म्युनिसिपल बॉन्ड्स, mortgage backed securities. All of these are same. It is just the way it is classified. So to manage liquidity needs, available for sales, the securities that are classified under available for sale securities can be sold off by the bank. And just like held till trading, the securities are mark to market, and unrealized gain and losses move into the income statement and eventually move into the bank's capital. Usually, the securities lying under available for sale securities would not be very fragile to contagion in the market, or would be backed by issuer's guarantee, or would be a mortgage-backed security. Anything that you do not expect to, whose price will fluctuate a lot, will have a lot of standard deviation on its price, that are relatively more stable in its price, on its price.
So those are available for sale securities with minimal standard deviations. Okay.
Yes. But अगर हम वैसे conceptual differentiation देखें तो कुछ नहीं है, सेम ही सिक्योरिटीज हैं जिसको आप या तो मैच्योरिटी तक होल्ड कर रहे हो या फिर यू इंटेंड टू सेल इन द मार्केट फॉर ट्रेडिंग पर्सपेक्टिव आपके पास है, या फिर लिक्विडिटी. अवेलेबल फॉर सेल सिक्योरिटीज यूजुअली लिक्विडिटी मेंटेन करने के लिए होती है कि कहीं भी बैंक में इलिक्विडिटी आती है कि डिपॉजिटर विड्रॉल आ गए, बैंक पे रन हो गया, दिस रन ऑन अ बैंक एंड बैंक नीड्स लिक्विडिटी, इट कैन इजीली सेल ऑफ दी सिक्योरिटीज, क्योंकि इनकी सिक्योरिटीज का प्राइस इतना वॉलेटाइल नहीं होता. एंड दे डू नॉट अवेलेबल फॉर सेल सिक्योरिटीज में मेजर डेफिनेशन यही है, द वंस द बैंक डू नॉट इंटेंड टू सेल इन द नियर टर्म बट मे ऑल्सो सेल. ऐसा नहीं है कि करेगी ही नहीं. तो ये तो हो गई एसेट की बात, वेयर वी डिस्कस्ड द 3 मेन एसेट्स, कैश, लोन एंड इन्वेस्टमेंट्स.
Can I ask
Coming
a question
to
on
the-
banks before you move to the next topic? See, when they say banks are fully capitalized, what does it really mean?
Okay, so I'll have to move to the next topic to address that, right? So
No
ये तो
issue,
asset
no
की
issue.
बात है.
Yeah, got you.
Okay, so the liability side of bank, how does that look like according to you?
Those are the
So all the
deposits,
deposits.
fixed deposits, or other revolving deposits that the bank takes.
Very right. Of course, the liability of the bank will have one major value or major chunk as part of its deposits, which is fixed deposits, current deposits on current account, savings account, fixed deposit, certificate of deposits, term deposits. All of that will form part of liability. So usually these term deposit, fixed deposit, certificate deposits, deposits on savings account are interest bearing deposits. The ones on current account are not really interest earning deposits. Then what else? We may also see funds under repo arrangements or repo agreements. So if the company has sold off securities and received money against those securities, it is yet to pay it back to buy back the security. जो रिजर्व होलसेल मार्केट में जब बैंक अपने रिजर्व्स को रिप्लेनिश करने के लिए ट्रेजरी बिल्स शॉर्ट टर्म के लिए सेल कर देती है, रिपर्चेज अग्रीमेंट जो अभी हमने डिस्कस किया था. तो इफ द बैंक इज अ काउंटर पार्टी टू रिपर्चेज अग्रीमेंट, वो उसके एसेट में दिखेगा. If the bank is the issuer of repurchase agreement or say is the lender in the equation, or sorry, is the borrower in the equation, then these funds will be reflected in the liabilities of the bank. जैसे आप ये पढ़ रहे होगे, Fed funds purchased, securities loaned or sold under agreements to repurchase, short term borrowing, all of that. So एक 2 तरीके होते हैं होलसेल मार्केट से पैसे लेने के. एक तो शॉर्ट टर्म बोरोइंग, ये अनसिक्योर्ड बोरोइंग होती है, ये कोलेटरलाइज नहीं होती है. ओवरनाइट बेसिस पे आपने लोन ले लिया बैंक से लाइबोर पे या लाइबोर प्लस सम परसेंट पे, तो वो शॉर्ट टर्म बोरोइंग हो गई. और एक होता है रेपो बेसिस पे, आपने रेपो अरेंजमेंट्स में, रेपो अग्रीमेंट में आपने लोन लिया फॉर अ डे, 15 डे, कॉल मनी, नोटिस मनी, जो भी आपने मनी ली, लेकिन वो पैसा जो आपने लिया है इट इज कोलेटरलाइज्ड बिकॉज उसके अगेंस्ट आपने ये ट्रेजरी बिल उस बैंक को रख दिया, उसके पास रख दिया. यू विल बाय दैट बैक बाय पेइंग देम बैक, राइट. तो आप repurchase means you sell it with a promise to buy it back at a higher price. So that difference is the yield that lender earns. तो liability में हमारे पास डिपॉजिट्स आ गए, फिर होलसेल फंड्स जो आपने बोरो किए हुए, शॉर्ट टर्म बोरोइंग, दैट कैन बी सिक्योर्ड, अनसिक्योर्ड बोरोइंग और सिक्योर्ड बोरोइंग, बट होती है शॉर्ट टर्म बेसिस के लिए. Then there will be trading liabilities as well. जैसे ट्रेडिंग एसेट्स थे, ऐसे ही ट्रेडिंग लायबिलिटीज हो सकती हैं. ट्रेडिंग लायबिलिटीज वुड बी शॉर्ट सेल ऑफ सिक्योरिटीज. जब आपने सिक्योरिटीज बाय की हुई हैं तो वो ट्रेडिंग अकाउंट, ट्रेडिंग एसेट होंगी, लेकिन आपने जब वो सिक्योरिटी सेल की हुई है तो वो आपकी ट्रेडिंग लायबिलिटी हो जाएगी. सो अगर ऐसे डेरिवेटिव मार्केट में आपने शॉर्ट पोजीशंस मेंटेन की हुई है तो वो ट्रेडिंग लायबिलिटी में आ जाएगा. या इफ यू शॉर्ट सोल्ड एनी इक्विटी इन द मार्केट, इन द कैश मार्केट आल्सो, दैट विल बी पार्ट ऑफ ट्रेडिंग लायबिलिटी. तो ये तो सारे हो गए डिपॉजिट, देन होलसेल फंड्स, देन ट्रेडिंग लायबिलिटीज, एंड रेस्ट इज योर long-term debt, also known as subordinated debt, and equity capital. आपके liability side पे majority is coming from the deposits, then your short-term liability, which is wholesale funds, wholesale markets से जो आपने funds borrow किए हैं, then trading liabilities, trading account पे जो आपने securities को sell किया है, and rest is your long-term debt and equity. इस लॉन्ग टर्म डेट को हम सबऑर्डिनेटेड डेट क्यों बोलते हैं? बिकॉज द पेमेंट ऑफ दीज डिपॉजिटर्स, द पेमेंट ऑफ these short term debt precedes the payment of subordinated debt. मतलब the subordinated debt receive payment only before the payment is made to equity shareholders. And hence a percentage of subordinated debt is also computed in capital. We'll talk about it when we talk about capital of the bank.
So these are still the long-term deposits only, right? These are their customer deposits only, but long-term.
No. The subordinated debt, not at all. Long-term, it is the money the bank would have received by selling bonds, fixed income securities. लॉन्ग टर्म बॉन्ड्स, लॉन्ग टर्म फिक्स्ड इनकम सिक्योरिटीज अगर सेल करके, जैसे कोई भी एक कंपनी डेट रेस करती है अपनी सिक्योरिटीज बेच के, या फिर बैंक से एक बैंक ने दूसरे बैंक से लॉन्ग टर्म लोन ले लिया, तो वो लॉन्ग टर्म डेट है. Yes, these are debentures. Correct. और देन उसका एक स्पेसिफिक कैटेगरी होती है सबऑर्डिनेटेड डिबेंचर्स, और दिस सबऑर्डिनेटेड डिबेंचर रिसीव पेमेंट just before the equity shareholders receive their dues. So the payment of depositors precedes the payment of any other liability that the bank has towards anybody else. That is essential. And do we also know what is deposit insurance? Others, are you listening? Are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Time. चलो, डिपॉजिट इंश्योरेंस क्या होता है फटाफट?
On the entire liability corpus, probably bank is going and buying an insurance just in case there is any emergency.
Okay. Deposit insurance is specifically for the money received from depositors. So deposit insurance is an explicit guarantee, explicit blanket guarantee given by government on the depositor's account. इंडिया में the value is 5 लाख. मतलब अगर मेरे बैंक, किसी बैंक के अकाउंट में 5 लाख तक का डिपॉजिट है, सेविंग्स अकाउंट, करंट अकाउंट, फिक्स्ड डिपॉजिट, कुछ भी 5 लाख तक का है, तो बैंक चाहे फेल हो जाए, बैंक इंसॉल्वेंट हो जाए, मेरे 5 लाख गवर्नमेंट मुझे देगी. अगर 5 से ज्यादा है, 6 लाख है, तो उसमें से 5 लाख तो गवर्नमेंट देगी, लेकिन 1 लाख जाने का फिर भी रिस्क है. वैसे तो ये तो एक्सप्लिसिट गारंटी है. यूजुअली गवर्नमेंट प्रोवाइड इम्प्लिसिट गारंटी ऑन बैंक्स डिपॉजिट, क्योंकि दे डू नेवर लेट द बैंक्स फेल, बिकॉज दे नो दैट विल कोलैप्स द एंटायर फाइनेंशियल सिस्टम और कोलैप्स द एंटायर इकोनॉमी, कंटेजियन हो जाएगा. वो बैंक को फेल ही नहीं होने देती, डिपॉजिटर्स तक बात पहुंचने नहीं देती, और कुछ होता भी है तो वो बेल आउट कर देती है. बट एक एक्सप्लिसिट गारंटी गवर्नमेंट ने दी हुई है, जिसमें बैंक हर डिपॉजिटर के 5 लाख तक के वैल्यू को इंश्योर करती है. So in times of bank failure, government is going to make that 5 lakh money good for every depositor in the bank. 5 लाख तक का ब्लैंकेट गारंटी है। और इस डिपॉजिट इंश्योरेंस के लिए बैंक को एक प्रीमियम गवर्नमेंट को पे करना पड़ता है, आरबीआई को पे करना पड़ता है। So deposit insurance is there in India also, as I said, 5 lakh का है, यूएस में $250,000 तक का ब्लैंकेट गारंटी गवर्नमेंट ने दिया हुआ है अपने डिपॉजिटर्स को। सो इन टोटल मेरे बैंक में 5 लाख तक की वैल्यू कंप्लीटली सिक्योर है इफ आई हैव डिपॉजिटेड दैट मनी।
This is saving including all deposits, right? I mean, term deposits, everything, and all deposit included, right?
Everything.
Okay.
Deposits, yes, every deposit. बीच का the interest rate spread to earn from that interest rate spread. That is the bank's basic business model. Agreed? कि अगर से मेरे बैंक के पास इक्विटी है 1000 का, डिपॉजिट्स हैं 4000 के, और लोन क्रिएट किए हुए हैं 5000 के, ये डिपॉजिट्स पे ऑन एन एवरेज इसको 8% देना है, लोन पे ऑन एन एवरेज इसको 10% देना है। तो बैंक का स्प्रेड, बैंक का प्रॉफिट क्या हुआ, बैंक का बिजनेस क्या हुआ, बैंक ने कैसे प्रॉफिट बनाया इस पे कि वो 5000 पे 10% लेगा विच इज 500, 4000 पे 8% देगा विच इज 320, इसके बीच का जो डिफरेंस आ जाता है वो बैंक की अर्निंग्स हो जाती है। अग्रीड? दिस इज द प्राइमरी बिजनेस ऑफ अ बैंक।
And this is only the NII, right? This is the net interest income.
This is the net interest income, yes.
ओके मैम, इफ पॉसिबल क्या आप हमें किसी बैंक की फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट दिखा सकती हैं कि हम अगर उसे एनालाइज करें तो उसमें से चीजें सिलेक्ट कैसे करें? बिकॉज उनके ऑपरेशंस में सेल्स होती है, बट वो सेल्स किस चीज की सेल्स है? लाइक लॉन्ग टर्म लोन्स उन्होंने दिए हैं, वो सेल्स को किस चीज की, मतलब किस चीज की सेल्स को सेल्स ट्रीट करते हैं?
ठीक है। और अभी तो मतलब एनालिसिस पे मैंने आना है, उसके बाद हम एक बैंक की बैलेंस शीट और फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट, रियल टाइम फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट को एनालाइज करेंगे। तो ये दिस इज पार्ट ऑफ द प्लान, बट यू हैव टू वेट फॉर दैट। ओके
ओके मैम, ओके ओके ओके।
तो ये अभी बहुत बेसिक एक्सप्लेनेशन है बिजनेस मॉडल की। अगर मैं सिर्फ इसकी बात करूं तो कोई बता सकता है कि इस केस में रिटर्न ऑन इक्विटी कितना है?
180 upon 1000 into 100, like so 18%.
18%.
18%, correct. Let's say this investor says that he is not happy with this 18%. He wants more because management is to serve the shareholders of the company. Management has to maximize the wealth of the shareholders, and this investor wants this 18% to rise. What are the options for the bank? How can the bank assure increase in ROE?
Ma'am, by increasing the loan, interest on loan?
By increasing the interest on loan. So, but अगर ये तो market rates पे ही loan दे रही है, अगर वो loan ज़्यादा देगी और uncompetitive हो जाएंगे, तो it can lose on the business also. It'll have to, एक तो उसको अपना asset base या interest earning asset increase करना है, but अगर same resources हैं, asset base increase नहीं हो सकता. I'm just creating a situation. There might be other ways of increasing profits for the equity shareholder. There are many.
Reducing the interest on the deposits. I mean that's the only other way. You can reduce the cost outflows.
But don't you think the deposit rates are also very competitive? मतलब FD में मुझे पता है कि मेरे को 7.1 मिलता है, तो मैं कहीं और कम में तो नहीं करूँगी, है ना? तो
then it could be like you just invest in securities which are more interest bearing, which are more return bearing. So your loans, which
So-
you have converted into investments as marketable securities,
Mhm.
you are able to generate
Mhm.
more return from that.
Return on it. Okay. So there are many things that a bank can do. अभी तो ये बहुत basic चीज है. Bank actually perform many fee-based services. And उसके अगेंस्ट वो फीस अर्न करता है और इवेंचुअली इट एड्स अप टू द इक्विटी कैपिटल. But let's say the bank is just not able to expand its asset base, just not able to expand the revenue side to it. In that case, so I've just built an exaggerated situation जहाँ बैंक अपना asset base नहीं increase कर पा रहा या cost optimization नहीं कर पा रहा या फिर और revenue generating activities में enter नहीं कर पा रहा. उस केस में लेट से बैंक ने क्या किया, इट कलेक्टेड मोर डिपॉजिट्स. लेट्स से बैंक ने ये 4,000 की जगह 500 के डिपॉजिट्स और कलेक्ट कर लिए, 4,500 के हो गए और ये 500 इस इक्विटी शेयर होल्डर को दे दिए that you can take your money and now I do not, the bank does not need 1,000, it only needs 500 from the equity shareholder. Bank is still generating 5,000 worth of loans on an average 10% basis and 4,500 on an average 8% basis. Can we now compute ROE? Profit will be
140
5,000
divided by 500. So
140 divided by
5,
500.
Yeah.
Which is
almost like 30%, and little like 28%, 37%, something like that.
right. So the profit is 140 and 140 since the equity investment is only 500, the ROE now is 30%. So do we see an inherent incentive for a manager to reduce the equity capital? ROE is an ultimate profitability indicator. And the bank manager is able to increase this ROE just by reducing equity. So there is an inherent incentive with the banks to reduce its equity to increase the profitability. सिर्फ equity reduce करके deposit बढ़ाने से ROE has jumped from 18% to 30%. No cost optimization, no revenue optimization. Just the difference in its capital structure. ऐसा भी नहीं है कि उसने equity की जगह debt लिया है और उस पे interest दे रहा है. It just expanded its deposit. It was able to collect more deposits and it gave those deposits that amount to equity capital. Equity capital कम कर दी और ROE बढ़ गया. Is it okay for a bank to keep on reducing its equity capital?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
मैम डिपॉजिट जो होते हैं एक टाइम के बाद में आपको बेसिकली उसमें आपको लिक्विडिटी ज्यादा रखनी पड़ेगी जितने ज्यादा डिपॉजिट होंगे और एक टाइम के बाद ऐसा बैंक ट्रीट करेगा कि सभी लोगों को अपना पैसा तो वापस चाहिए ही होगा.
मतलब सभी लोगों को पैसा वापस चाहिए होता है बट ऐसा तो नहीं है कि सारे विड्रॉल्स एक साथ आ जाते हैं. But then there can be a case like that there is a run on a bank. बैंक रन हो गया और सारे डिपॉजिटर्स आ गए और उस केस में बैंक को लिक्विडिटी चाहिए. Hence, it is not okay for a regulator to let banks keep reducing its capital to increase its returns. Why? Because say there is
Then who will run the business? See, if you reduce your equity holders, I mean, like you can always make it zero then, I mean, you can always go to that level. Then who will run the business actually?
I mean, of course, equity are the owners and they'll be here. There's always going to be owner to a business. Business owner के बिना तो I mean, जो मैनेजर है उसका भी तो शेयर होगा ना इक्विटी में. जो बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स है उसमें मतलब दे आर रिप्रेजेंटिंग द इक्विटी स्टेक, बट मोर ऑफन देन नॉट इवन द मैनेजमेंट ऑफ द बैंक आर पार्ट ऑफ द इक्विटी ऑफ द कंपनी.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That I mean,
So
reducing
of
equity
course
would
zero
mean
equity
that
तो नहीं हो सकता तो.
exactly. I mean, I was just taking that as extreme. I mean, what I was trying to say is
हाँ.
that the reducing
हाँ.
equity may. I mean, what does it really mean? I mean, like reducing. I mean, you can't reduce to a large extent, right? Because there is a the entire banking is a business.
But
So
there is an
somebody is
incentive,
investing money.
no. अगर मैं let's say मैं मैनेजर हूँ, मैंने अपने 10 लगाए और डिपॉजिट ग्रोथ से ही रिटर्न बना लिया, तो सारा पैसा तो मेरे पास ही आ रहा है प्रॉफिट. मतलब मैं कम से कम इक्विटी लगा के या नए इक्विटी इन्वेस्टर्स में क्यों इन्वॉल्व करूं. इक्विटी इन्वेस्टर्स इक्विटी स्टेक में तब बांटूंगी जब मुझे पैसा चाहिए और मेरे को पैसा नहीं मिल रहा. बट बैंक में तो ऑटोमेटिकली डिपॉजिट्स के थ्रू पैसा आता है ना, तो फिर क्या जरूरत है इक्विटी लगाने की. आप खुद का पैसा लगाओगे, आप अपने ऑपरेशन स्टार्ट करने के लिए, ऑफ कोर्स देयर विल बी इन्वेस्टमेंट, इनिशियल इन्वेस्टमेंट, बट इवेंचुअली व्हेन देयर इज एन ऑटोमेटिक वे ऑफ जनरेटिंग कैपिटल, व्हाट्स द पॉइंट ऑफ ब्रिंगिंग इन न्यू इक्विटी इन्वेस्टर्स? व्हाई वुड आई वांट मोर इक्विटी कैपिटल व्हेन आई कैन इजीली हैव कैपिटल फ्रॉम डिपॉजिटर्स? Am I making sense? I mean, the question that I'm throwing out on you.
It is making sense that I mean they already have the capital, right? It's actually not a capital, though it's I mean it's not a really something that I mean they have a liability on that capital. It's not that it is zero liability capital, which is equity actually.
राइट, उनको चाहिए ही नहीं. मतलब उनका कैपिटल जो रॉ मटेरियल है वो ऑटोमेटिकली डिपॉजिट्स के थ्रू जनरेट हो रहा है अगर, तो वो इक्विटी स्टेक को आगे क्यों, मतलब व्हाई वुड दे सेल द इक्विटी स्टेक, व्हाई वुड दे ब्रिंग इन मोर इक्विटी इन्वेस्टर्स, व्हाई वुड दे नीड दैट कैपिटल? दे वुड ट्राई टू कंस्ट्रेन इट एज मच एज दे कैन बिकॉज दैट विल इवेंचुअली गिव देम मोर प्रॉफिट्स.
Sure, yeah.
राइट. सो रेगुलेटर के पर्सपेक्टिव से ये ओके नहीं है. ऐसा नहीं है कि आप कम से कम इक्विटी कैपिटल के साथ काम चला लो. व्हाई? बिकॉज इन केस देयर इज अ स्ट्रेस्ड ईयर, a stressed year is when there's some problem, there's some black swan event like COVID or financial crisis 2008. There are huge defaults in those years because the loans that are asset in the bank's balance sheet, there is always a possibility that there can be 1-2 guys that would not pay back their loans. There will be losses on loans. So what if there is default in the market and there is contagion and there are many loan takers that are defaulting? Say 12% of the asset has gone bad because it was a stressed year and there were many defaults. People decided to not pay back.
So the loss has to be borne by equity holders rather than the depositors. That's what the aim is, right?
Right. So let's say before and after capital structure अगर हम देखें तो 12% ऑफ एसेट लॉस का मतलब हुआ कि 5,000 से अब एसेट की वैल्यू कितनी हो गई? 5,000 के एसेट थे, 1,000 का इक्विटी था और 4,000 का डिपॉजिट था. तो अब क्योंकि the asset has to be written down, there is default and you're not going to receive 12% of the value, the assets or the losses will amount to 5,000 like 600.
Yeah, 600, yeah.
इस केस में you have enough cushioning. You can ask equity shareholder that since profits you were enjoying, you have to enjoy losses also. तो ये 600 का लॉस सब कौन बियर करेगा? इक्विटी शेयर होल्डर करेगा. लेकिन आफ्टर कैपिटल स्ट्रक्चर the problem is that equity is only
400, yeah, 500, yeah.
500. Rest are deposits. तो यहाँ पे वो 500 का हिट तो बियर कर सकता है, लेकिन उसके बाद तो बैंक will have to ask its depositor to take the loss. The loss will be transmitted automatically to depositor, which the regulator would never want. Because loss to depositor means distrust in the entire financial system. These depositors are not there to bear the risk of, they're not there to bear the market risk. Depositors doesn't even know what is happening to their money. Depositors feel more secured if they have trust in the system. वो पैसा ही इसलिए डाल रहे क्योंकि उनको ट्रस्ट है कि चाहे 10 साल बाद या 15 साल बाद या 5 साल बाद उनको ये पैसा वही मिलेगा और जो भी उसकी अक्यूमुलेटेड वैल्यू होगी वो मिलेगी. बट अगर डिपॉजिटर लॉस में चला गया, डिपॉजिटर को लॉस बियर करना पड़ा, देयर विल बी डिस्ट्रस्ट इन द इकोनॉमी एंड दिस डिस्ट्रस्ट विल अगेन initiate this entire cycle of contagion, crisis, recession, and all of that. So regulator cannot let that happen. There is an inherent incentive for management to constrain the equity, but it cannot go on reducing the equity just to increase the returns on equity. Did you understand the point I'm making here? कि मैनेजमेंट पर्सपेक्टिव से तो बहुत अच्छा इक्विटी कैपिटल कम है क्योंकि जो ओनर है उनको उतना ही, दे कैन ओनली लूज एज मच कैपिटल एज दे हैव इन्वेस्टेड. उससे ज्यादा का लॉस तो वो नहीं लेंगे. तो अगर इक्विटी कैपिटल इनफ नहीं है तो लॉस मे गेट ट्रांसमिटेड टू डिपॉजिटर विच इज डेफिनेटली नॉट द गुड थिंग फॉर द इकोनॉमी. So this was debt, equity, and assets of the company. Any doubt till here?
So when the banks fail, or when we say that the bank has gone, bankrupt, that's the case when the value of the assets have gone below the equity?
Yes. No, that's the case when the value of the assets have gone below its liabilities. When the bank or any other company has a negative net worth. When its earnings are not enough to fulfill its obligations. Negative net worth or negative equity is when the bank is insolvent.
Got you.
Okay. Okay. What is the time? Okay, we have well exceeded. There is a lot that we are yet to discuss. We'll do it in the next class. I'll try to arrange a class, arrange two classes in the upcoming week.
Yeah, normally, we don't have classes on Tuesday. There's no finance class on Tuesday. If you want to use that slot, it might be good in an evening slot. 7 to 9 is there.
7 to 9. Okay, we'll do that. Let me schedule a class this Tuesday itself. Thank you for listening, guys. Anything you want to say or comment? Ask.
This 4 to 5 hours class that you're talking about, this will be like, a recap of everything, or there'll be new topics that we'll cover there?
Depends upon the teacher. If the teacher is able to finish the course before the schedule in the stipulated classes, then it will be a recap. It is on the basis of teacher and student. अगर आप लोग को नए topics करने हैं या फिर जो भी समझना है, it's up to you. You can spend that time as however you guys seem fit.
Sure.
Ideally, the guideline is that they have to recapitulate the entire syllabus with you.
Understood. Yeah.
Okay, guys. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am.